All right. So today we're talking about self esteem and self worth, or the lack thereof in my case, but in a real way, not the fake motivational way. I'm getting into Michaela's emotional video about her appearance, the whole mess with AI filters, and just how hard it is to actually feel confident these days. So let's get into it. Okay, my friends, welcome back to another week of Unstable with me, Dom Torres. And it's lovely to be at the end of the week with you all because it's just been so disgusting and horrible. And I really don't have many positive words to use. Um, and I'll be completely honest with you. This episode is not going to be too much of an uplifter, but we're going to try to make that's the goal. I always have the goal to try to even with heavy things we're talking about, any heavy topics, and when I mean heavy, it doesn't need to mean, for some it can mean heavy, it could be kind of more lighter. Things hit us in different ways, and I just think that my personal goal, just in life, really, at least in this stage of my life, is really to I love having, raw and real conversations, but also I don't want it to feel too doom and gloom because it's really weird because for most of my life, I think I felt like I was a natural pessimist. I always thought worst case scenario. I'm an overthinker. I overanalyze everything. I always think someone's mad at me, and obviously all that comes from deep rooted insecurities and some sort of traumas and yada yada yada. But I would say in the last couple of years, I've really somehow, and I don't know, I think politics has played in a way, which is a very interesting, um, segue into this new chapter of being more optimistic about things. I think I might have even said it on here before, but my journey with being more optimistic, at least in terms of, our political environment, has come from a place of, well, we could live in doom and gloom, or you could fight back and fight for your ideals and your values and your voice and your freedoms and your ability to have self-expression and uh, that requires some form of optimism to believe like this just cannot be the state of how things are and that's it, end of story. And I think that is, has seeped into other parts of my life in terms of, intentionally, unintentionally, I don't know. I always have felt like I've tried to leave most conversations, with people, in my life or just kind of like random conversations with, either strangers or acquaintances or, kind of just those random moments that happen in life with people that you don't know. I want people to walk away feeling heard and not just heard, but then, sometimes simply feeling heard, you get a sense of value, which then leads to some sort of positivity. Like, okay, I got this. I can do this today. I can, I can, you know, move on with my day with some form of optimism. Sometimes it is needing to hear a few extra words or just hearing someone's acknowledgement, not just listening, but acknowledgement of like, I'm so sorry you're going through something so heavy right now. Those things really help contribute. I feel like my intention is always to, when people walk away from a conversation with me, not obviously listen, generally speaking, because I'm a real asshole sometimes too. I say some really dumb shit. But my goal, that's my goal, is I want people to walk away feeling like whatever burden whatever burden that they're bearing is a little less heavier after having a conversation with me. I don't know if that sounds narcissistic or conceited or egocentric. I don't know. I just know that that's my goal. And I just want people to feel good about themselves, which is not always, it's not that's no easy task these days. And with that being said, I saw a video actually today. I had a whole episode planned on something else, and I'll get to it because I do want to talk about at a later time, of course. Kind of the original theme of what I wanted to get into, but I saw a video by an influencer that I follow. Millions of people do, and I don't know how to say her last name, so I'm not going to try to butcher it. But her name is Michaela. She's a makeup influencer. She's the one that kind of has that. She's from Boston, has that Boston accent, and I'll be completely honest with you. There's a lot of videos out there that kind of question her whether or not that accent's real. I don't know. Sometimes just listening to her talk and, put her makeup on that kind of stuff is just amusement within itself, and I'm sure she probably thinks that too, and that's obviously part of the goal, I'm assuming, with her content. But she's a makeup influencer, and she actually has recently, I think within the last year, launched her own. I don't know if I think it's a skincare brand, so skincare focus. I don't think it's makeup, but I could be totally wrong on that. I'm not a huge fan or anything. I just, in the zeitgeist of influencers, I know who she is. And a video came across my FYP. I was taking a lunch today, and she starts it off with saying something, and I don't want to butcher her words necessarily, but she starts. This is I even forgot to announce this, so we're gonna back up for a second. This is just where I fucking am. Apparently, this is we are getting into right at this moment unstable topics. And this first topic, now pretend like the last, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute that I just talked about Kayla's video didn't exist. You feel me? I'm not even gonna edit this out because the whole goal is I wanted this to be as raw as possible. Anyways, so Michaela, the influencer, the makeup influencer, one of her videos came across and she starts it off with saying that she wants to talk about something that's been like sitting heavy with her. Um, and it's about her appearance and how a lot of people have a lot to say about her appearance. And I was like, okay, I was clocked in for a moment, and she goes into saying how I guess there's a lot of accusations that she uses filters, and and Lord knows that a lot of us do, and a lot of influencers do on their videos. I don't know how that works on videos because I've have apps that can do that to videos, but They I don't know, at some point with certain movements, they look distorted, so I don't know how that works necessarily, but, um, she goes into saying how she doesn't use filters, and I think this started off with, something that she might have saw in her comments, in regards to an accusation about filters. I guess she also goes into saying how when people approach her, take pictures of her like out in public, whether it's like fans or photographers or whatever it might be, they often catch her at bad angles. And she goes, and people have say like, you look very different in person, and that's where the accusation of the filters come through. And then she leads into this emotional, conversation. She starts crying. Um, and I was really paying attention, and she said, what did she say? I wrote it down. She starts getting emotional. She starts crying. She says, I'm aware I'm not an attractive person. And I'm going to tell you, like, again, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of hers. I'm not, and not for any reason other than haven't, I don't watch makeup content. I sometimes, just like with anybody else on the internet, you watch things for whatever reason because it provides some sort of comfort or, um, I don't know, relaxation, escapism. And so she's one of those, and she's a very huge influencer. So of course I know her. I wouldn't consider myself a fan, but I'll tell you what, when she said that, not really knowing much about her other than a little bit of her public persona that she puts out there was something it's a very raw video. It's a very raw moment that she has. And hearing another human, behind this camera, and she was trying to meanwhile, the whole video is her, normal content that she does of putting on her makeup and prepping her face to put on makeup, and she starts crying, and, hearing somebody, like, kind of say that in the tone that she said it was very heartbreaking to hear. Influencer and money and, attention, all that shit aside, hearing somebody say that because it comes from a place of people essentially bullying her. She goes in within the video, starts talking about how there's like pages on TikTok that are dedicated to posting really horrible pictures of her, and or like doing side by sides of a picture that she takes versus when she's out in public. And she goes on to say, like, I have a horrible side profile, and she's like, I can't help it. It's how I look. I understand it. I'm not, she goes on to say how she's not photogenic. And she specifically knows how to get a good angle of herself. Um, And she goes on also to say how, like, photographers and, people out in public, if they take pictures of her, they don't give a fuck, right? Their goal is not to really make her look good. If anything, and this is kind of an age old thing, especially in celebrity culture and paparazzi culture, they're trying to get the picture. So getting your best side is really not a high priority of any photographer if there's some sort of value attached to it, which also is part of the whole conversation. But it really affected her, and hearing and seeing her just on a human level cry and say those words, because she has said it a few times of being not attractive. She's like, "I am aware that I'm not pretty. I'm not a model. I'm not." And I just felt such sadness for her, such sadness because I'm on the record of being hard on influencers and influencer culture. I'm a marketing major actually in college right now, and I'm doing a lot of the work that I've been doing, even in some of my marketing centric classes and in my English classes. Oddly enough, this semester for myself, um, I'm doing a whole project on the subject of influencer marketing and influencers in terms of marketing, which is kind of interesting that those two, you know, subject matters are colliding at the same time for a class that has nothing to do with marketing. It's an English class, but so it's been heavy on my mind of just like from a very specific point of view of an outsider. I wouldn't even say a consumer, just an observer. I tend to, when I look at a lot of these influencers, I'll be completely honest with you, I roll my eyes at a lot of them, because I am very indifferent of how some, not all, there's themselves and how they use their platforms. We are in a very odd state of the country right now in terms of, what's going on politically and with just human rights and humanity. And then, one moment you're seeing families being torn apart and certain legislation taking place that is gonna, ruin thousands upon thousands of lives and healthcare and whatnot. And then you can see a video about that, and you swipe, and then you see, an influencer opening PR packages of free shit that they're given, and it just seems such a divide even within that I don't know how to. Sometimes I feel like I'm an alternate universe, but uh, I'm no stranger to talking about that, and that's not what this is about. The reason why I say all that is I'm putting that aside of like looking at someone who's having a real human moment. And there is something so fucked up about the state of the world that we're in. And this is not just in, I can't imagine, but that it's, it's isolated to the United States. I think it's a global thing because social media is a global, business. It's a global mechanism that I feel like, you know, people in this whole social media environment that we're in right now, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record because what I'm saying is nothing necessarily groundbreaking and new. I feel like it's been a conversation for well over a decade minimum. What was I saying? So this has been a conversation that's been going on for well over a decade, and makes me sad for. I can't even say certain generations of people. It makes me sad for all generations of people that we're in this state where we're so hypercritical of, and I'm just talking about looks right now. I'm not talking about all the other shit that you could easily dive into, morals and values and this and that. But just we are in such a dark and deep place that I have no idea how we get the hell out of it when we have little to no conscience of saying the most egregious and disgusting things to people that who we don't know, and have the audacity to talk about their looks in such egregious ways. I don't understand that. Because for somebody to sit and put up their camera and start crying and saying, you know, having a very real moment, mind you. And what I appreciated about that in a way of her vulnerableness, her vulnerability, and posting a video like this, because she didn't have to. And let's be completely honest with you, with the business of influencers and content creators, you can shape these conversations in a way to, earn a buck very easily. You can brand a vulnerable moment into something that is well polished and we all buy into. Most won't buy into it. This wasn't that. This was actually putting your phone up, pressing play, barely having any makeup on, trying to put makeup on, and having a real just talk about like, y'all make me feel like shit about myself, and I'm aware I'm ugly. I'm aware I'm not pretty. I'm aware that I'm not attractive. And I just feel like there is something so heartbreaking. And I can't think of other words other than that because it's just like how much more deeper can you get to, feeling heartbroken for another individual who in that moment at least feels very like confident enough to say like I'm not attractive and I'm very well aware and you all keep reminding me as if I don't know what I look like. And that is so sad that we have done that to each other. It's so sad that we continue to do that, that we can be so emboldened to put in someone's, comments and talk about their looks and call them fat and ugly and stupid and talk about like other details about their body. It's disgusting. I feel like sometimes we have these conversations and people will call me dramatic or people will say someone's being dramatic or you're overthinking it or and I'm just like, how do we unless I can't even think of a good excuse of why and when you on paper, if you were to write these things down, like horrible comments that you can make about somebody. You write them down and then you write 4 or 5, and then the next thing you have to do is after reviewing them, you have to write a statement of why someone would be validated in saying those to another individual, especially one they don't know. Not that it makes it any better or worse. I think it's equally as horrible. I don't think you should say to anyone that you personally know, like how fat and ugly they are, or how unphotogenic they are, or how they have, flabby arms and how their stomach hangs over their jeans. I don't think that's very it makes it any less hurtful. One could argue, could make it a tad bit more, I suppose. Um, but I think that is so disgustingly sad, and I don't know what that reasoning would be, how someone could validate it, and therefore I don't know how that's a dramatic stance to have. I see it a lot where I relate to her in that moment, and because I've never posted a video like that, I've talked about it, but I don't. I try not to go there because in very many ways I feel like it will kind of temporarily break me because it's something I'm very sensitive to, and that is my looks and how over the years how people have, especially other gay men, have made me feel about like the way I look, and I feel exactly the same way she does. I don't think I have a good side profile, or at least it's nothing special. I think you look at me and you see thick hair, big eyebrows. I am short. My body is not ripped. I don't fall into the same stereotype. Similarly, of how certain women, I think, or how women, pit each other against each other with not having perfect bodies and this and that you know for, gay men in the gay community, it's very similar in a lot of ways. And I was having a conversation with someone about that, not that long ago of there's a lot of similarities because we have stereotypes within our community, right? You hear them on TV and all sorts of media, influencer media as well, like, oh, of course, yeah, I'm friends with a gay guy. Obviously, he's good at, interior design. And, oh, I have a lot of gay friends. Of course, they all dress well, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's lighthearted and funny a lot of the time if it's done right. I would say with professional actors and comedians, you know. But there is a stereotype for a reason that I don't think we often think about. I don't. I think a lot of people who have, I'll just say it, pretty privilege, are so not aware of how outside of that how people feel even by just simply saying stupid ass shit and putting out certain content where you're just flaunting this image of like perfection all the time. And then you have people like me and people like her who I have often said those same exact things that she said. I just don't say them to a camera, but I certainly think them a lot of I'm aware that I'm not hot. I'm well aware I'm not sexy. I'm well aware of how I look. I'm well aware because I see myself in the mirror every single day. And sometimes I try to avoid the mirror. And a lot of that is, again, is deep rooted in a lot of insecurity that I try to work on when I can. That's not all day, every day, but I certainly have my moments. And at certain periods of my, in life, they happen a little more frequent. But we don't need people to remind us of that, of how we don't look a certain way or how, there's certain, tones to how somebody who looks a certain way treats someone like me without having to say that I'm ugly, but they kind of treat like, oh yeah, whether it's a look or certain words of how like maybe you're trying to flirt with somebody and clearly they're not into you because not because of your personality, because they have not gotten to know that, but clearly it's about how you look and your waist size or how your arms look or your face or your shape of your face and your body. Like it's all of that. I just think it's, I feel like I'm no psychologist, I'm no researcher, but I think it's fair to say that's been around for a very long time. And I think social media has only exacerbated that so much more because, in many ways, I mean, it really goes into a lot of different areas of life, but with social media and our access to people and the parasocial relationships that people make, whether they're positive or negative, everyone thinks they have the right to say whatever they want, whenever, how they want, regardless of how it can make somebody feel. Now, granted, that is your right. You can do that. I think there's very little to no accountability that people get online because you can make burner profiles or um, mark yourself as private, or some people have profiles just to troll people, like how she mentioned in her video. She said people have, like, channels dedicated to making, putting up horrible pictures of myself. And obviously I don't know what that's like. However, I'll tell you a short story before we wrap this topic up. But I remember, I think I was either my senior year of high school or was just 18 right out of high school. And I remember this was back in my hometown. I was out of the closet. I was throughout almost majority of high school. And I don't remember how I knew this. This is MySpace days. And I don't remember how I knew this guy, but we were friends on MySpace, and they were kind of they were, I feel like they were actually younger than me, which is kind of, look back, it's so sad that I even gave a fuck. Um, or we're in the same age. For the sake of the story, we'll say we're in the same age bracket. And, I didn't know them personally, but they were kind of a fixture within that younger gay scene in my hometown. I kinda knew a lot of people and knew everybody, and, um, had, so many friends on MySpace and, that kinda thing. I guess I blocked out a lot of this because I do not know how it got to this point, because I don't think I never met this guy. I couldn't even tell you his name at this point. I never met him. Again, it was just like you knew each other from social circles and just kind of, I don't know what you even call it, just you just know of people within your own community, right? This was in Alaska. Rather, it's Anchorage, Alaska. It was a big town. It's a big city, the largest city in Alaska, but it's not, obviously, it's not like Chicago or anything. It's still while it's a big city, it still has, everyone kind of knows each other, so to speak. And so this gay guy, I don't know what happened. And I think we got into some sort of tiff where it was, what it resulted in, though, was he posted all over people's MySpace. And I'm remembering it now because when you go on MySpace, you can go on people's pages. If you're a friend, there was like that activity stream or that comment stream, if I'm remembering correctly, and you could post pictures in that activity stream. And that's because, the modern day feed, I suppose, that we are used to now. And I just remember he took one of my pictures, blew it up where it was just like my face to highlight my eyebrows. And he highlighted them and put like a caterpillar or something, and it was very like Perez Hilton back in that day. If you're a millennial, if you remember Perez Hilton back in the day, what he used to do with like his like website, he'd post all the celebrity pictures and like almost like graffiti them in there with like using that paint application that used to be on all of our Microsoft computers. If you remember, it would do shit like that and write horrible things about, celebrities, primarily women. And this guy did something similar, and I can't remember what he called me a horrible. Oh, he called me, I think there was a few things. I think one of them was, 'cause my name is Dominic or Dom, and he would put Dom, dirty old man, and make fun of my eyebrows and how ugly they were, and called me ugly, and wrote all these things. I can't remember the plethora of whatever it was, and then was posting them all over people's MySpaces, even to people that I didn't even know. And I didn't even know this guy. I did not know him. I could not, to this day, I don't even remember his name. It was just like a fixture in, our community. And I remember I cried so hard because I was like, because my first thought was, not only was that so hurtful, and I was you think I'm insecure now, I was very insecure then. I had zero, I didn't have self-esteem. I had no esteem. And I remember that after just feeling the hurt and digesting that like pain of like, what the fuck? My first real thought was, what did I do to deserve that? Because I didn't, we weren't friends. I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't really have that many gay friends, if at all. So it wasn't like all my friends were like all my high school friends that were all girls. That's all I hung out with. So I couldn't tell you what it was. It was just a fucking mean asshole that thought, "Oh, I know. I can troll him because he does not look a certain way," and put it out there. And I think it's quite clear that that individual probably has issues of their own, especially at that time, and God bless wherever they are these days. And that is nothing near what Michaela or any influencer or celebrity or anything goes through. There's no comparison. However, like I said, there is something about so just violating for someone to take pictures of you to exploit, your insecurities and make fun of your looks when you've done nothing. When you've done nothing, and I just think that is so egregious, and I think we can do better. We can do so much better than stop like making fun of people. And I just felt so bad for her. So that was her video was about. I think you should go take a look at it because I just think, if anything, I think it's an example, for even people that don't participate in that kind of behavior to innocent people of making fun of them for their looks or at all. I think it's a good reminder of like for us as people and as humans that we can do a lot better than what we're doing right now. Um, yeah. Shifting gears into my other topic, something similar ish, I guess, because it had me thinking, because she had mentioned, so in her video, she mentioned Michaela, how she doesn't use filters on her videos. And in a disclaimer, she did it say at one point, she's like, yeah, I think she said, I filter them or, you not alter, but yeah, you change the lighting, you add a filter like for color, that sort of thing. She wasn't insinuating like I change my whole body and make it so where I look like a whole different human being. But you add you touch it up and you do all that kind of stuff to make it, curated. I think we're all guilty of that. And you are guilty if you put something on Instagram or Facebook or on your iPhone and you just select a different filter because you like how the sun hits with a certain filter on it. You change the color or the light balance on any of that, no matter how extreme or how light you do it, you're filtering and you're altering the photo from its original, form. So I would argue that most of us do this. However, she made a really good point because as someone that doom scrolls on TikTok way too much, it's a problem. I've been better about it though. I have to say, there was a time I was talking about this also recently to somebody who does not have TikTok, and I was like, "What?" And it was so sad. That was my reaction. I was like, "What's wrong with you?" So full disclosure, I complain about all this shit, influencer culture, all this kind of stuff, while also being a consumer. So I'm heavily aware that I'm a part of the problem. Self awareness, it's a beautiful thing. But scrolling through, so I've toned down my doom scrolling, at least at night for sure. Where there was a time where I had to like, in order for me to fall asleep, I would have to like scroll, scroll, scroll. And I'm like, that is d- there's probably so many things wrong with like your eyes and your brain and whatever is happening and my sleeping patterns. But I digress. But through all that, let's call it research. That's a nice way of kind of framing it. It wasn't doom scrolling, I was doing a lot of research. And you come across a lot of photos of where you kind of stare at someone's video. And again, they must pay for this shit because, I do have an app that I pay for like photo tuning and what I don't even know the right word, kind of like not Photoshop. It's not Photoshop, but the same thing. Like you can adjust like the filters and kind of angles to make it look a little more. It's for my phone. It's, because I'm not a photographer. And you can do videos on it too. Because sometimes, like, if I have, like, my skin, for some reason, even though I'm religious about my skincare routine, I've been breaking out randomly in spots on my face that normally I don't. And so, like, I'll look at a video of this very podcast. A couple of weeks ago, I had dry skin around my like mouth, and I'm like, that is so gross. And I tried so hard to put a filter that would maybe blur it a little bit, and I just couldn't find one. So I just said, fuck it. I think I put one where it didn't look as extreme, and then the second video I started uploading to like my TikTok page for this podcast, I just gave up because I'm like, well, the one that started, maybe masking it a little bit, I was either way too tan or you clearly are looking at it and it's filtered. You're like, okay, light doesn't shine that way. Like, and I just, that's not my jam. That's not my jam. I don't find any joy of altering something to the point where something's unrecognizable or not realistic. If that's your thing, God bless, love that for you. That's not mine. But it had me thinking about this, like everything from, you know, again, I'm very guilty. I will have a very vulnerable moment with you all, and I admit on this podcast and maybe in a social media clip of my very own that I do use Facetune. Sometimes I will smooth. I'm very insecure. I have these like well, I'm someone an ethis, I can't even talk. An esthetician once told me because I don't have these aren't wrinkles on my forehead; they're stress lines. I don't know if that's a real term. I've never looked it up because it's too depressing. I used to get Botox, and that has clearly worn off since the last time I've gotten it. Where was I going with this? Oh, so I'll smooth out my face because it's a deep insecurity of mine, or I'll take away a blemish or a pimple that I have. I will definitely do that. If I get a picture at a certain angle where it's much lower, my eye bags that I have sometimes are I don't know why the camera hits them the way they do at the right angle and at the right degree. That's like almost like the equator of my face. It looks I have these like huge indentations on my face, and it's I don't like it. So and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not reshaping my body to the point where it looks like, I'm, 120 pounds or anything. But I think there's nothing wrong with a little smooth, a little like this and that. But there was some shit on there that I'm just like, maybe this person might not be recognizable if you pass them on the street. Like, I feel like there are some people that exist whose videos I've seen, like random people, that if you walk past me on the street, I would not even look at you twice because I would not realize that's you. I have a very good feeling. And it just makes me think of like, and there's no, and when I say that, I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm not saying that to be a bitch or anything. I am saying that as someone that's questioning why do we do that to ourselves? Why do we get so this is my face. I remember at the beginning of this podcast, I did a whole thing where I was talking about my body, and I have, been on a workout and fitness journey, all this kind of stuff. And yet I'm still at square one in terms of my insecurity of how I look at my body because it's not much. I'm not. I don't have a six pack or anything. I do the best that I can, and I'm proud of myself, and it should end there. However, I still am extremely hard on myself, and this is why, obviously, we put filters on things the same way that I just said. Like, oh, I want to hide the lines on my forehead. You got to ask yourself, why the fuck do we care so much that we have to look so damn perfect? Or not even perfect. It's like slightly enough. Like I want to get away with just a little bit because I don't. Who what is out there that is going to come back around in a way that's so negative that we feel like we have to add these kind of filters? Like, what is it, about society? I mean, I have the answers, but I kind of don't have the answers all at the same time. I mean, I know it's because people are horrible and mean, i.e., Michaela's video, but the psyche behind, like, besides that, why the fuck do any of us care about how somebody looks? And there are some really great people that I try to follow on TikTok and Instagram that, who don't give a fuck. And I'm like, this is me. This is who I am. I can't help the way my bone structure is, or listen, I might be um a certain size, and this is my weight, and I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm good with myself. Whatever happens behind the scenes is my fucking business, but what I present to you, I am comfortable with. It's just, you got to ask yourselves, like, what is it about those of us? Again, I'm 100% guilty when I'm saying this. I'm putting myself in there. Why do we continue building these facades if we're also kind of in that age of, or not age, but in that, I thought we were going into that direction where it was kind of cool not have the filter and be, like we went through stages of body positivity. In some ways, I feel like we've gone backwards on that in the last couple of years. I could be wrong. I hope I am, but I continuously see, droves of people that are just eager to call people fat for some reason and disgusting. I, I don't know what that's all about, that's what I guess my bigger point is I thought we were heading in a direction where it's like, this is what I look like. This is me, blah, blah, blah. It ain't that. It's not as cool as it used to be to add these filters where you almost look like a fucking ghost and transparent. I thought we were kind of getting out of that. And it turns out I think I was gravely wrong, or some way or somewhere within that, we kind of took a detour and it brought us back to, the starting point, so to speak. You have to ask yourself, and this is what I ask myself, even when I, add a filter to my picture or I smooth my skin or whatever that is that I do, There is a part of my psyche, I guess, where I ask myself, like, what is this doing to my self-esteem or lack thereof? Like, how is this how? Because because I guess when you really think about it, I guess it's almost like a Band-Aid, right? Like, I'll use myself as the only example here. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I clearly have issues with my self-esteem, my self-worth, insecurities. Like, I'm extremely hard on myself. You can ask any one of my friends. And I'm the type of person that will be the first to make the joke, right? I try to beat everyone to the joke because in my mind, I think that's what it is. Even with people that are my dear, dear friends, it's almost like command that know in my brain, like, at all times, be prepared to make yourself the brunt of the joke so that you can get ahead of it before anyone else is, even though in actuality that would not happen because they're all my friends and they love me. I think some of them might not. I don't know. I think there's a few of you that I know that can't stand me, but you tolerate me. I'm just kidding. Well, I don't know actually. But in general speaking, your friends are not the ones that are criticizing the way you look. But I've seen videos of like that too online before, many times of, I watched a video not that long ago, but this girl telling this story about how one of her friendships of one of her best friends ended because one day her friend just got hypercritical of her weight and said, you're really disgusting and fat. Like, you got to do something about that, and said it verbatim like that. And it's just like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's leads to why we add filters, is because we're getting so ingrained of, we know we don't look a certain way. My skin is never going to look porcelain. So even though I know that, you're going to meet me and see like, wow, you actually have lines on your forehead, Dominic. So I don't know why they're not in any of your pictures. What is the antidote to all this that's gonna solve, like, okay, it's not helping. It doesn't help. I don't even know if it is a temporary solution when we add a filter or face tune our pictures and do all this kind of shit. Like, I don't know what goal actually how it is helping our self-esteem whatsoever. And every time I do that, there is a little birdie in the back of my mind that lives in my brain that is saying, "Chirp, chirp. Why are you doing this? Ain't helping. We're not." Your journey of trying to love yourself a little more every single day, this ain't helping. And so you got to ask yourself, like, what is it? Like, what is it doing to help our confidence in any way? And what does it say about you? And are we, and especially the ones that might not be as aware of, you know, when they look in the mirror, it's like, do you start believing that you look a certain way based upon what you are creating on your phone? I just think there's a whole lot of psyche stuff there that, I don't know, it's been on my mind. Like, every time I take a picture of myself, I have utter disgust, first of all, and that's not okay, but I do. I'm just being real here. This is not to episode is about getting sympathy, or it's all about having real conversation right now. And I oftentimes, when I take a picture of myself, I literally get depressed for about like 10 seconds of like how disgusting I think I look, followed by me trying to prop my phone in every kind of other way. And I'm just like, man, not that anyone's eager to see a picture of me on my Instagram, but there's that, I don't know what that is. There's that slight, like percentage where you want to I don't know if it's impressing someone. I don't know what it is, where you kind of almost hope that someone will scroll through and be like, damn, okay, look at him. Because we do that, right? How many times do we go through our phones? Again, with all people that look in that square little box on their social media page, they look perfect because they have the six pack and, their arms are bulging, or they have a thin waist and, big tits, or whatever it is that you defined as, on paper that is perfect, right? It's almost like you're trying to impress those people. It feels very much like a high school moment, right? Of you just trying to get the attention of the cool kids, not even just to, like you, but just to simply accept you, that you are like, you are worthy to be here just as much as they are. I feel like it's very similar to that feeling. You're always chasing something. It's almost like, yeah, I have to, if I can't present myself in this real way, I can't, when I walk out, my front door, my skin won't look the way that I can make it kind of look, right, in these apps. So doing it on there makes me maybe, one could ask themselves, maybe it gives a temporary piece of like, it'd be nice to look that way. So maybe I can present myself that way somewhere. But we have to remind ourselves that none of that's real. None of that is real. And I think that's the harsh reality for some people that have a hard time distinguishing. I think there's probably at some point it has to be a study that's going to be done that dives into the psychology of just what social media in general has done to our brains. And I feel like there's probably somewhere in there that people, it's almost like, people that lie, that start believing their lies, that they don't think it's a lie because they truly believe the shit that's coming out of their mouth. I think we're seeing a lot of that these days. Who's to say there's something similar in terms of like using AI filters or just any like photo editing apps that we do it so much that I wonder if there's people out there that do it so damn much that they're like, yeah, I look like that. I don't know. I don't know, but I think we could, in general, with all this, with these two topics that are different but related, I feel like we could do a whole lot better because it's hard to be on your own journey, right? Of try to build or rebuild your confidence and your self worth, and to look at yourself in the mirror like we all deserve to do, and be like, you are so amazing and beautiful and hot, and anyone would be dying to be with you. We all deserve to have that moment and every single day, not moment singular moments all day, every day, to look at ourselves as we are that, we are that bitch. But it makes it really hard when there's people that are so eager to raise their hand to remind you, you ain't. You're pretty ugly, actually. And that is so disgusting that it exists in this world, isn't it? It is so egregious and so puzzling because I could not even tell you. I'm not a psychologist, like I've mentioned. I'm not going to school for it. I don't even want to dive into it because I can barely handle the psychology of my own brain. But it beats the hell out of me how we figure how to unwind all those behaviors, if possible. Is there a way? Because it's here to stay, this whole landscape. So I don't know. But maybe somebody in the comments here, if you could tell me, DM me, like maybe if you're a psychologist, have done some history of this, sociology. Like, can you tell me how does this, with social movements in particular, like how does this work? Like, is there a possibility we could like steer the ship where we can have social media, but be, in a healthier place? Is that even possible? I don't know. I'm not hopeful, but okay. Well, that was our unstable topics for this week. Just hang tight for a moment and we'll get into some more stuff. Okay, so here's an anchor question I want to ask you all. So we're talking a lot about self-esteem and our self-worth and how we view ourselves and filters and people who are eager to remind us of how we look or how we don't look rather. So here's the question that I want you don't have to answer it right now, but I want it to stay with you for the remainder of this episode and maybe even further on, whether you have issues with self-esteem or not, or if you know somebody, or even if you have moments, as we all do as humans, where we question how we look and is it ever enough? What I want you to ask yourself is simply, why do we attach our worth on how we look? That's the $1,000,000 question. Why do we attach our worth on how we look? Because that weaves in and out of a lot of different scenarios. And I would be willing to bet that the people that are maybe even the most confident or exude confidence have those moments that we might not even think about where it weaves into. For me, it's simply just looking in the mirror. It's also when I put on clothes, I buy new clothes. I'm at a clothing store that I love, and I see all these patterns and shirts and these outfits on mannequins and pictures, and you see things that you like, that you gravitate towards, fabrics and colors, right? And you get into the fitting room, you put it on, and I just sit there. And there's been so many times where I have gotten close to either crying or I've just felt so defeated. And I'm like, I'm not buying, not only am I not buying any of this, I want to just leave, I want to tear it off my body, leave it on the floor, and run to my car and go home. That feeling of, of being attached, our worth being attached to us by simply of how we look, weaves in and out of a lot of different things. It could be as simply as I was watching TV, the other day, of people talking about, they're kind of laughing. It was kind of lighthearted, but when you think about it, it's no different, of how they hate being filmed while eating. I cannot agree more with that because I don't know many people where I have said, damn, they eat so sexy. Oh, they are so hot when they eat. I'm sure there's a fetish out there that exists. I ain't talking about that. I'm just talking in general terms here. So I think it's common for most of us where like eating, especially if eating like buffalo wings. Oh, geez, Louise. That is one of the most unattractive foods they eat. Or like hot dogs. They're talking about, like, I just hate being filmed eating. And they're very, very beautiful people. Very attractive. It was two women. It was a reality show. I was just thinking that's yet another example to why do we care? We're eating fucking food. Food, hopefully that is good and it's nutritious. Or you know what? Damn, it might be fatty, but damn, it tastes so damn good and I'm happy right now. It could be a celebrated moment of whatever, but we're too in our heads about how we look eating it. And therefore we kind of feel, but we try to hide ourselves. How many times have you heard? I've heard this many a times in jokes and in real life. And I've said that I've kind of thought about this too. Like when you go on a first date, and say it's like a dinner or maybe your first dinner date with somebody that you just recently started seeing, right? And now but you've done the coffee thing, maybe a movie, I don't know. Now it's time to actually have a meal in front of the person. And how many times have you heard somebody at least say how they've strategically ordered something off the menu where it wasn't, where it'd be less, of a what's the word I'm looking for? It was almost the I know eating is not the most attractive thing, but you gotta find the one item on the menu where it did not look like you're gonna, you're a pig at at a trough on the farm. You know what I mean? I have been that person where I've gone on dates and ordered something that I did not either like or want, but I knew, okay, it's less embarrassing to eat that than the thing that I actually want. That is so sad, is it not? Of course, there's a line of like you want to present yourself as put together to to some degree, and but even that, who cares? As long as my rule of thumb in life has always been, if you're not harming anyone, you're a kind person, you do good things in the world, you have good intentions. As long as those are your core, your milestones or the things that guide you throughout your day. Those aren't materialistic. They have nothing to do with how you look or what you wear or how you eat. They're just they help guide you of just being a decent human being in the world. As long as you have those things, as long as we operate in that manner, why do we care so much? And it goes back to that question that I just framed. It's why do we attach our worth to how we look? Do you know how many times where I've gone to a store, and this is similar but different, where I won't ask certain questions because I'm too embarrassed, because I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to look, needy. I don't want to look ignorant. Um, that comes from a place, tell you that it's not really a story, but I think a lot of these questions can be answered by your own personal experiences, but not on the receiving end, but on the end of where it could be initiated. I'll give you an example. A lot of my background is working in retail. And how many times have you been there with your coworker? If you've ever worked in retail, even hospitality, if you're a waitress, a waiter, a maitre d', a host, whatever, in a customer service role in particular. But for me, in retail stores and clothing stores, and how many times did someone ask a question that you thought for whatever reason was dumb, but it wasn't dumb to that person? And I come from the place of, like, in life, I do think that there are some dumb questions. I typically hate when people, there's no dumb question. Yeah, there's a couple really stupid questions that you should not ask. However, the mass majority, they're not necessarily stupid questions in life. They might be to you. And how many times have you been on, again, you're the initiator or on that side, of this equation, and someone asks a question innocently, coworker, yourself, whomever answers it, customer is happy, walks away, and you guys make fun of them. Oh my God, that lady, she was so stupid. Can you believe she asked that? Like, she's so dumb. Can she not read? Can you believe that person just asked me that? Do they not know anything? That's what I'm talking about, that kind of shit. I know it exists. And there are many moments where I could be shopping, doing this and that, and I will ask something that I truly need to know the answer to, or really want to, or just want to know the answer to, because it might, it might influence my buying power in that moment. And I won't, because I don't want it to seem as if once I walk away from asking said question or comment, whatever it might be, that they're going to be like, roll their eyes and think I'm stupid, even though I don't know them. Why? Because somehow I'm attaching that moment to my own worth of how I view myself in this world. I think with self-esteem, we often just think about our looks. And I think that's a big part of it. It's how we present ourselves. And it's the first thing that we see. We always talk about first impressions, right? Especially at work, or that, age old, saying of, you only have one shot to make a first impression, so you better do it well. I don't know if that's exactly how it's said, but you get where I'm going with it. That you only have one chance to make, you can only make one first impression with somebody, a job, dates, meeting a potential business partner, whatever it might be. Okay. And I think that's true to many extents. However, I think sometimes we take that way too literally, that we are trying to introduce ourselves as if we are making our first impression every day that we walk outside the house. So we have to be put together from head to toe, from our outfits to our makeup to our hair to this and that. And this is not everybody, because I value the people that can walk outside their doors looking maybe a little less presentable than others. Does not make them any less than. I think we take some of these things way, way too deeply. And I have been in this space lately thinking about this, and it weaves in and out to its, severity. But, I've been looking at myself lately, and I don't know. I kind of know what sparked it, but I kind of don't know at the same time. I've just been extremely hard on myself, a little more than usual lately. And I think it has to do with a lot of different elements. I think, I feel quite lonely a lot of ways in life. Like I have, a great group of friends, but they're all like in relationships, and my best friend's traveling right now to Germany, taking a lot of trips with his, I don't even know what they are. We'll go with boyfriend. I don't know if they're anything more than that yet. I have friends that are, you know, adopting animals and moving in together. There's these that are buying homes, and they're all beautiful things. And I remember last year, I had a very tough year very tough. One of the hardest in an extremely long time. But also in ways that I'm not used to. So I could argue that was one of the toughest years. And, my birthday came around, we do this thing in my friend group where we do a honey roast where everyone goes around and says something, great about you, about the birthday person. And we're doing that, and then one of my friends who is kinda newer to our or hasn't, like, really hung out with us, it's this friend that's, separate from my, immediate friend group. And everyone went and said something really nice. I was okay. And then she said, "No, it's your turn. You have to say something nice about yourself." And I literally stopped in my tracks. I had nothing to say. And I will say for that example, that was a very real moment because I truly didn't, because I was in a very low space at a really dark time that I truly didn't. And not for any other reason than I just mentally was not in a space where I could say anything nice about myself. It just wasn't. So what I did say though was, I give examples, I'm looking around at all my friends, they're all winning. They're excelling in their careers, their relationships. Again, some are, moving in together, or buying homes, exploring this, going on vacations, living beautiful lives. And this is a thing that I remind myself when I'm in these kind of spaces to this day. But what I said to them in my little speech there was, while I'm not happy in my life, watching all my friends around me win makes me feel like I'm winning. That I'm somehow like, if my friends are winning and they are succeeding and they are accomplishing because we are friends, and I'm playing some sort of role in that by simply living vicariously through your journey. And that was as much as I can give. And I think that is so true to this day, that especially when you're in these times when you have such low self-esteem and you have such low self-worth, and you struggle like me and a lot of other people that have moments of really deep depression in terms of how you value yourself. It's hard to find those things to say that are lovely about yourself, that are good, because there are moments that you just don't have them. And if you have a friend like that, I suggest, instead of belittle, and no one has done this to me. So if I have any friends listening, this has not happened to me. But just thinking outside the box, and something much larger than myself. If you have a friend who is struggling because they feel lonely, that they feel low about themselves, you know, I had a friend once that really had a hard time with their self-worth and their self-esteem from a divorce that they had. And they just fell apart, and it just affected them that way. And then some people can go through a divorce, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and thrive. It's important to remember that there's no one size fits all equation to any of this, especially of how we view ourselves and how we deal with that very question that I asked at the top of this segment of, why do we attach our worth to how we look? Because some might hear that and be like, well, I don't. And it's important to first acknowledge, and I think maybe that's the first step of trying to figure out this crisis that I think we've been in from the dawn of time with how we view ourselves, is we need to have more conversations where there's listening and not antagonizing, listening and not accusing, listening and doing less questioning when someone is struggling with how they feel about themselves, simply because maybe it's not something you can relate to. It makes me think of something kind of different, and that is, there is a conversation to be had with, and I see it a lot online because of my algorithm, of course, about pretty privilege. And there's a lot of people, and I said this at the top of the episode, and we're talking about Michaela, but like, one thing that I often face is, especially in, with gay men and the gay community, one of our many stereotypes is how we're all fit and in shape and we look beautiful and dress well and we're just so hot and whatever, right? No, that's not how that works. Just like every other human being, our community is full of different shapes and sizes. We have different backgrounds and different cultures and skin tones. So that's just not true. But that stereotype, while, we love to talk about equality and we love to talk about, being diverse, this community of people, at least from my experience, has always been no different than any other group that's aside from straight white guys who don't care about anything other than money and power. Every other, group who criticizes one another, like, yeah, do we support each other? I think to some extent that's always the goal. There's a lot of gay men who look down upon those that look like me that don't look perfect like them. And they have that like pretty privilege where they can get away with, whatever and wear whatever and say these like overly sexual things. And it's strictly funny. But, someone like me or someone who doesn't, look anything like some of these, very put together gay men, they say shit like that. And you have the ones who just like side eye them or look at them like weird or say, and I have witnessed this, I have been on the receiving end, like, what do you know? Because you don't look like them. I think, listen, people make careers out of, their looks, obviously. And I think with gay men specifically, this might be controversial and I don't care. It's my opinion. It's my thought. And my thoughts and opinions are ever evolving. So there might be a point where that evolves, and changes. Gay men and how they view themselves and their sexuality. I think it's, one thing I will always stand up for and I'm proud of is how my community, we are so open about our sexuality and sex and sexual expression, as we all should. There should be no shame in that, especially those that might be, questioning their sexuality or want to experiment. There is no shame. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things um, of an evolved society is how and a lot of us are more open to the spectrum of sexuality and gender, of course. Those are two totally different things, mind you. And I think in terms of sexual expression and sexual identity, there's such a spectrum that there's no like that could look so different for any individual. And I love that there's less shame in it now. However, not all of us can get away with, and I'm not talking about when I say sexual expression, I don't mean discovering your sexual identity, but there's also a segment of people that over sexualize themselves, which is, been with us since the dawn of time, that make careers out of it. And, they show off their bodies in a certain way that others just don't or can't and they could, and some do. And I think that's amazing. They're just not as celebrated as those that look a certain way. And so where I'm going with this, I have no solutions. Where am I going with this? I have little to no, uplifting, like there's going to be something that I'm going to say that's going to, inspire you all. It's just all these things that I've just mentioned have been heavily on my mind for whatever reason lately. And they're tough. And anyone that's ever struggled with their appearance or their self-esteem or how they look or their bodies or been made fun of can probably understand some of the things that I've said today. I think it's everyone's responsibility that if it's something, and this goes back to one of the things I just asked a few minutes ago, if you have a friend or somebody or you're just simply someone that goes to bars and likes to meet people, look around and look at your demographic of people that you keep around you. And I would challenge you, if they all look similar and they all look, and I could look whether it's their bodies, whether it's their skin tone and their backgrounds, whatever it is, if there is a similarity and a theme here, I would strongly encourage you to maybe do some self-reflection of why that is. I'm not accusing anyone of being a bad person for it or listen, I'm not judging. I don't know. I'm simply saying, as somebody, just a peer observer of the world, I just think that we have such a problem of being so hard on other people for how they look and how they present themselves. And I don't understand why. That might be such a cliche or such a very, I feel like I could hear myself saying that, and be a whole segment of people that would roll their eyes like, whatever. And I'm pretty sure it's those same people that would roll their eyes that would not want to be friends with me or date me or anything. I think we have such a problem that we're so willing to comment on people's photos and call them fat and ugly or message them, criticize people for their looks. And again, this is nothing I'm saying necessarily is, revolutionary. But I think it's something that we're struggling with a much different capacity because we have such access to all of us now in a way that we didn't have 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. By simply picking up a phone and being able to have access to view pictures of whomever and judge them in a way that we didn't judge them before. You can simply Google picture or Google search people's pictures and you might not follow them because their page is private, but oftentimes you will be able to see their pictures anyway somewhere. The point I'm making is we have such access now. We have some privacy restrictions that you can make in yourself, or you can not participate in the whole social media, landscape, of course. But I think we have such access to people, and with that access, somehow within that, people have gotten so much meaner at the same time. I think what I will say is, as we end this conversation, again, I know I literally just said that I have nothing positive to offer. I will say this, and I'll wrap it with a full circle moment in this episode. How, I talked about in the very beginning, um, that by nature I'm a pessimist, but by choice and honestly, by not just the world, but through growth, I've become much more an optimist and, an optimistic person in general. So I'll say this. One thing I tell myself through all the darkness, whether it's these people who are so mean to me or when I'm mean to myself, or how I present because I'm so worried about how people might perceive me or how I look or whatever. I use this in all aspects of life at this point because it's very simple and it's a very easy thing to tell myself or remind myself. And I truly have to believe this because if I don't, then there's no fucking point. I have to believe that there's always more good than bad, that there's more love than hate, and that while there's going to be people that make really shitty ass comments and call you names and make fun of how you look, even in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, and never seems to end. Some people just don't mature, but I will stand by the mass majority of people truly are not so egregious and do not care about your body type or the wrinkles on your forehead or how big your nose is or how big your eyebrows are or your waistline or how your picture looks. I truly do believe that people truly care more about who you are and what kind of energy you bring into the world rather than how you present yourself physically. And if they don't, they are simply not your people. And if they don't, they are simply not the ones you are marketing yourselves to. See that? I say I did that there. See, I am a marketing major. Because I'll be very clear. They can go fuck off, and that's what I try to remind myself every single day when I'm having these moments. Even now, and I think it's important to tell yourself that even when you don't believe it, there's a lot of science behind just reminding yourself and saying the thing that you might not believe in that moment, but saying it anyways, because at some point you really are going to start believing it. So who cares? Who cares how you look or how, others make you feel? They are not your demographic that you are marketing yourself to. They are not buying your brand. So therefore your brand is not for them. And I would argue to say there's going to be at some point they might, turn around. I want a piece of that brand because hopefully they evolve and learn. Fat chance, maybe, but I still all just kidding. I really do believe humanity in general will always evolve and change and grow. And that's with their thoughts and their opinions. And it's really hard to see it right now, even in the climate that we're in. And while these two subject matters are very different, I think how we present ourselves to the world and how we were received is on a lot of our minds for a variety of reasons. Remember this, there's only one of you, and no one can offer the world what you can offer. Point blank. Fuck the people that want nothing to do with that because they are not your people. There is more love than hate, and there's more good than bad, even when it's impossible to see it. I promise you, I know that's true for a fact. And I think with most things in life, it has to get really bad before it gets even better. And when it does, it is glorious. I always say, as the challenges that I've faced in my own personal life, you ask yourself some of those questions like, why me? Why is this happening to me? How much more can I take? Blah, 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 all those questions. The thing that I tell myself now is when I have those moments when they start to creep in, which are very valid, is I have to remind myself, not only is there more good than bad, whatever trials and tribulations that you go through and any difficulties, whether it's with yourself or with others or the world, there's always gonna be a bigger payoff. There's a reason why we go through the things that we do. I don't know why, but there is a much larger payoff for you. You just have to believe that and believe in yourself and you believe in your abilities and feel the things you need to feel because we ain't perfect. We ain't gonna be, but that's what makes us so great. That is exactly what makes you great and what makes you just as unstable as me. I tried to wrap that up the best way that I could. I don't know if it worked or not, but one could argue this is a really cheesy conversation. I think it's something that's on my mind. I think self esteem is such an issue that is so fucking complicated and so tough because there's no, there's really no answers. There's no equation of what to follow, right? We can only do the best that we can. And that's what I think you need to celebrate yourself with. It's yourself with people that love you. Work on yourself when you can. And then the days that you just can't, and you have nothing good to say about yourself, don't force yourself to do it. You don't want to bullshit yourself, right? But always try. And if it doesn't feel right, that's okay. There's always another day to continue trying. I love you all. Believe in yourselves. Have a moment. Look in the mirror and tell yourself, you know what? I might not believe fully in you at the moment, but I know that you're a badass anyways, and we're going to conquer the day as much as we can. And I know that you can because I believe in you and I know you can. So I love you all and stick around and I'll give you a moment of stability. Okay, my friends, and we're back with our final moment of stability. And this is from an amazing individual whom I love so much. Grammy award winning and just badass woman, Lizzo, who I thought, in terms of just when you think about, at least for me, when you think about your self esteem and your self worth and all those things, there's no one who champions not just body positivity, but just self empowerment more than Lizzo. I really do believe that no matter all the, take all the baggage outside of it, whatever. I think she's quite incredible. I'm going to read you what she said. This is an interview that she did with, I think this is a magazine in the UK, but this is directly from her. I'm going to read this. It's a little long, but I think it's coming from her, and I'm going to co-sign it and say it's coming from you. So if you need to hear this right now because you're feeling a little low about yourself, or you're a little lost, or you're not feeling good about yourself, or in your skin, or you're feeling down, this is from Lizzo, but also from me. And here it is. She says, I'm blessed, and I want you to know that you're blessed. I want you to know that you woke up this morning, and that's a blessing. I want you to know the sun is shining somewhere, and that's a blessing. And even if it's raining, it's cleansing you. It's a blessing. I want you to know that whatever you're going through, if it doesn't feel good, that you feel good again, and you have whatever it takes to feel good again. You are capable. You deserve to feel good as hell, and you deserve to find that. And as proud as you are of me, I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you because life comes at you fast and sometimes it can be so hard. But if I can make it, I know that you can make it and we can make it together. There's no way to better end this conversation. That you can make it, I can make it. And listen, you guys, we can make it together. And that's the thing I want you to remind yourself of, those low moments when you look yourself in the mirror and you're trying to say something nice about yourself, but you struggle with it. Just remember this: we collectively can make it together. I love you all. Thank you for joining me for another episode. I hope it sparked a little something inside of you. And if you rolled your eyes, that's okay because you gave me a listen. See how that works. I will talk to you all next week. Love you. Bye.